consciousness, mindset, health, relationship, business. Welcome to the Aubrey Marcus Podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Aubrey Marcus Podcast. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Batman in real life.
The lover.
The lover. Bryan Callen, what's up, my friend? How are you, brother?
It's good to be here.
Yeah,
good to be here in the adult playland that is on it.
Right?
I had myself a shake. I had myself one of these coffees with butter. Is it yak butter? Doesn't matter. It sounds good. And they harvested from the Himalayas. Someone climbs all the way up at $15 an hour and they milk that fucking yak and then they churn the butter.
We have a yak den here and on it. Yeah, a little pasture.
What are they doing down there? They're churning yak butter.
If you can last 12 seconds on a yak, you're a man, Brian.
Yes, I did back in my days when I was meditating and riding yak. When I was living on boiled hay and eating goji berries, meditating for hours. Damn it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny, you showed up here on it, and there was like a convergence of all of the pretty girls in Austin just happened to like come right outside of the booth. Do you have that effect? Is it like
I do. I think it's a combination of wrinkles, wisdom, and deep creepiness.
It's like a scent. It's like beaver musk.
Yes, it's a beaver musk, and I rarely wear pants, so I've got that going for me. Yeah, it's funny how you get older and you get way less picky when you see the girls here are just, it doesn't matter. Like if you're like, Brian, throw a dart. I'd be like, oh, cool, I don't care. He'd be like, well, no, I wanted the other one. And there's no difference to me. They're all ridiculous. You know, it's not like you become less of a connoisseur as you get older. You just become, she's young with tight skin. I'm in. I'll risk my house and my family. Yeah, it's an interesting.
Yeah, that was a bit of the conversation we were having before, and just that there's systems that are set up by society that are, when you actually take a fresh look at them, they don't always make that much sense.
Well, you know, most people don't take a fresh look at it.
Yeah.
In fact, I have actively I've done my best not to look too carefully. If you start asking those questions and really going down that rabbit hole, you come into, let's just talk about the construct of marriage and monogamy. Most societies, at least modern societies, seem to organize themselves that way. So when I see that, I think to myself, there's got to be a good reason. There's got to be something about it. And I think I know the reason. The idea that let's just stick with one woman, be responsible to that sort of contract. But then, of course, if you really look around, the price you pay for that, you know, is
can be steep.
Can be steep, and it can be layered, and I think, by the way, it can also be a lie. I think sometimes when you don't have an honest conversation with your partner or yourself about what this really means, you might be lying to yourself, and that's where you also run into problems. How many people do you know in relationships get fat, stop having sex, but somehow feel they have to be, and we're unforgiving.
Yeah, and just building resentment. I just read a book by Don Miguel Ruiz, his latest book, and he calls those type of relationships the monster that eats love.
Oh,
it's like you just create this contract where it was supposed to be based on love and this excitement and two people who are attracted to you, and then you get all of these rules and the government signs off on it.
Well, you're also told that stuff never lasts.
Yeah.
Right? Aren't you told that?
That'll fade away.
That's the fire. It starts with fire, but it then ends up being an ember that turns into a platonic love. And I hate that kind of talk. Right. I think it goes along with all the other things people tell you about not being your best, not having the life you really want. And so I resent that kind of thing. I think that it's I like the conversation that you seem to have with yourself all the time, which is you're always, and we've had these deep conversations about this, you're always trying to do your best not to be a liar, not to be a hypocrite, and to be as honest with yourself as you possibly can, and then mirror that in your actions in your life. and all the while being responsible to the people that you're with. That's a rare thing. You're a pimp, is what I'm trying to say. You're a supreme apex. You're what we call the apex pimp, Aubrey.
Well, to me, I see these things, and it was, I guess, something that was early. Like, it started with maybe seeing religion, and I look at, because, I went to high school here in Texas, and I got suckered into, like, Bible ski trips and shit like that. Like, oh, come skiing, and it'll be fun, and Telluride. Yeah. And it's a total just Bible.
Time for your baptism, boy!
Totally, like, wake up, Bible study, like, afternoon Bible study, lunch, like, and I'm like, whoa. Yeah. And so, I'm... I wasn't raised that way, but I start hearing this philosophy, and I'm like, there's some flaws, some like serious flaws in here. I start asking questions. There's no answers to those questions. There's just silence and awkwardness, and I don't get invited to any more Bible studies after that. But it's this system that's so widely adopted that doesn't carry the logic that would allow me to follow it. And I think there's so many other systems like that have become almost canonized like religions. And I think the relationship contract is one of those. I think funeral, like the death contract, like how we handle death in funerals is another one. You just kind of go along with this charade where everybody's sad and you wear black and you do these weird, put somebody's meat in a box and mark it. But nobody ever really thinks about that. Like, what would be the best way to do this if you started fresh and actually created something new? And I think I like to look at all of those things, from religion to philosophy to ritual to all that, and just say, let's fucking start fresh, because momentum can lead to some weird...
Well, I think you have to be careful, though, about tearing down the walls of the institution that have been there for a long time. See, I think that you may find that if you want to be a real revolutionary, which it sounds like you do, you sometimes will surprise yourself with sort of the idea that, wait a minute, I seem to be coming full circle. Sometimes those things, those rituals, by creating your own rituals, you're almost falling into the same trap. And I don't know if it is even a trap. I think that might be unfair to institution, especially institution like, let's just take the Judeo-Christian ethic that's been around. If you want to talk about, especially Judaism, you're talking about, I think it's, 3,500 years old. And it's still going pretty strong. And I think that one of the reasons it goes so strong is that the institution, the manuscript, the church, the houses of worship, the temples and the churches, and even the clergy hierarchy are all symbology that at least create parameters for you to live your life. Now, you can have problems with those parameters, and I certainly I just could never really make it relevant to my life. But I do think the value in the institutions that most of us seem to have a problem with, and I'm speaking about you and I, and because I think I fall in your camp for the most part.
Yeah.
But the value is that somebody asked me, what are your goals? And I said, well, I'm 49, and not to be a dick, but I'm living my goals. I mean, I as an actor and a comedian, I guess I could be more successful. I suppose instead of playing to 1,000 people or 600 people, I could play to 5,000 people, the way Joe Rogan does. Or I could have an even bigger house. Or instead of the Tesla that I just got, I could get the newest Tesla, the ludicrous speed. I don't know what success is, et cetera, et cetera. But my goals are not that anymore. My goals are internal. My goals have way more to do with self-mastery, with having command over my own appetites.
Yeah.
And with maybe even, by the way, and this is heretical in a world in today's culture which is all about self-celebration. But I think maybe even the idea that I can sort of forget about myself, not even define myself, and maybe take myself completely out of the equation.
Yeah, become a force of life rather than this collection of memories and identities and ideas.
That's right.
Just breathe.
That you
live.
guard.
That's the
that
ultimate
you guard
goal.
very closely. That's right. And so
You still have not put together a cogent defense of these institutions. Like you started this rant.
Well, because I think those institutions actually, though, if you get into them, I think they can help you with that. I actually think,
or they can sidetrack you down a weird, strange road.
If you allow them, if you use them as truth with a capital T, if you're a fundamentalist, yes. And I've had an experience with a Christian recently in that way, where I was like, "Ooh, boy, you're really nice until I don't go your way."
Yeah.
And then you get pretty nasty.
Unchristian.
Ooh, do you keep me right out of your... I got kicked right out of your circle.
Yeah. There goes the unconditional love.
That's right. And so, in my opinion, I think that if it's used as symbology and as posts, sort of a paint-by-numbers sort of approach to how you can get to the point where you are no longer the biggest factor in life.
Yeah.
And you reach beyond yourself.
I just think the problem is it's not practical. It doesn't have function. Like I'm not against ritual and even institutionalized ritual. Like for example, I've done many ayahuasca journeys down in the jungle. And they're very ritualized, not any different than perhaps the Catholic rituals. But everything that they do has a purpose that has become self-evident from participating in the ritual. So if I'm going to rebuild my own rituals, it would end up looking very much the same because it's based upon feedback and practicality and practice. Like this is the most efficient way to prepare the mind for the journey that's about to take place. Like is the marriage contract the most efficient way to foster love between two people? Is that the agreement? Maybe, maybe not. You have to take a look at that. I think everybody should take a fresh look. Is the funeral ritual the most practical way to get people over the loss that they feel upon the death of a loved one? You know, I think really it's just people just do these things kind of on momentum without saying, is this the most practical ritual? It's just kind of developed out of something. Well, so if you're going to rebuild it, like start fresh, it may look the same, but it may not. It may look dramatically different. It's kind of like Daniele Bolelli wrote that book, Create Your Own Religion. And I'm just taking that a step further. We all do it to a certain extent, and that's kind of what you're talking about. You're kind of like saying, take the institution as a whole, chart your own path within it, which is really creating your own subset of that larger canon and then following it. And I'm just saying, have even more freedom than that. Do that if you want. I love some certain things about Christianity. I quote, the teachings of Jesus often, but I draw also from Lao Tzu, and I draw from some ayahuasca maestro I saw, and all of these things that create my philosophy. Like have full freedom, where you just really create what's going to best.
But a good microcosm for that is Papua New Guinea. I mean, Jared Diamond looked at different tribes that have been isolated from each other and from anything for 40,000 years. So some tribes will eat the bodies, and some will roast and cook them, and typically they don't typically die of what they call kukuru, which is a laughing disease. Others will let the body putrefy in the sun and dip their sweet potatoes in the juice, good stuff, and eat them. And then there are others that will bury the bodies traditionally, and so there are so many different burial rituals and marriage rituals that go on. You can. I think, however you reinvent the wheel here, you're still going to find yourself trapped in sort of, at least we need to define, to an extent. Human beings seem to need or have nostalgia to define with song or with costume or with something. The beginnings and the ends of these life cycles.
No, I agree, and I guess the world that I would like to see someday, and then I guess that I'm actively trying to create, is a world where there's, instead of one answer, it's a multiple choice. And it's you basically draw together. It's like a build your own teddy bear workshop rather than buying the one off the shelf. It's like, oh, okay, you want love with an individual. Well, here are the myriad options, all of which have certain benefits and certain detractions. Kind of like if you're looking at an insurance policy or something like that. Like, okay, in this policy, it's full monogamy and traditional or whatever. In this policy, there's it's an open relationship where you guys explore different lovers together at the same time. This is another variation on that where you're allowed to have separate lovers. This is a variation where it's full polyamory, where you have multiple primary partners. And you look through and you just kind of coolly look at all the options and say, okay, well, I think this option, would probably have the best results. And same with like the funeral ritual. It's like, it's not just cremation or burial. It's like, oh, I want to celebrate like they do in New Orleans, or I want to have this funeral pyre with games where people are jousting and fucking juggling and roasting fine meats, and
well, you're living. You're living in a time. Your timing is good.
Yeah.
Because you're living in a time where that is more affordable to us, and because I think a lot of sort of the dogma and if you think about how Christianity was enforced. A lot of that had to do probably, I'm guessing, with how costly it was to be a promiscuous person and explore other sexual relationships because of things like gonorrhea and syphilis that you didn't have fucking, antibiotics for, etc. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are the more we learn about brain science, the more we learn about what we're about. And we have a pretty good example of what strong divisions, strong belief systems do when they belong to one camp and another strong belief system that belongs to another camp. See the wars between the Muslims and the Christians.
Yeah.
See what happened to the Jews, what the Christians did to the Jews just in the 20th century. We have 1,000 examples. I can go through Sri Lanka, the Bangladesh, the different civil wars. Look at the civil war and the partition of India between Pakistan and India and all the blood slain, etc. It goes on and on. So, your timing, it's not surprising that someone like yourself says, I wonder if there's a better way. I wonder if, because it's very easy for people to align themselves and even go to war over what they deem to be the truth. And because what they're doing is defending the truth.
Right.
I mean, if you think about war, it's not, it's not my idea, but I can't remember who said it, but people don't go to war because they hate each other. In fact, people go to war because they love and want to defend what they believe to be their truth, their way of life.
Yeah, it's a weird trick of the ego. It's an attachment to an identity.
It's very strong. Nationalism is as strong. Why do you think people are so fanatical about their teams? Every time I see another group cheering for their teams fanatically, I think to myself, that same mentality, just so you know, I love it. I'm all for cheering for teams. It's great. But that same mentality, that tribal mentality is what leads us to galvanize around symbology, propaganda, and launch a war.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, fan is short for fanatic.
That's exactly right.
That's where it comes from. And you see that played out in like the soccer hooligans and people who are willing to really fight for that. And it's this funny dance where a team that you have absolutely no association with becomes weak.
Yeah.
Like you just adopted it as, oh man, we lost today.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? We lost today. You were watching on TV. You had nothing to do with this contest.
Strong
of sport,
association.
And then so that thing, when it becomes part of our identity, it becomes part of our survival mechanism to protect it. Because anything that lessens or attacks that is an attack on us. We're unable to separate our identity, separate our ego from ourself. So it becomes one and the same, and it all becomes confused. An attack on our ego, which is our identity, becomes an attack on us. But it's really not an attack on us. We're fine. The Cowboys can lose every single fucking game, and we're fine. We're totally fine.
You're right. I mean, like I said, before we started recording, I think you're on to something. But, you may... good luck. Good
Thanks.
luck. I almost feel like... I feel like... so when I watch the UFC now, when I watch fighting... God, I love jiu-jitsu and I love MMA. And but what's interesting about watching MMA is that now you're seeing a lot of guys who are top-level fighters who seem to be boxing it out. Mm-hmm. It seems to be a boxing match.
They've neutralized the
That's
other
right,
skills,
because they've neutralized the other skills. And I can't help but think, I wonder if boxing started that way. It started as fighting, and it came all full circle until guys were like, you know what? Let's see who can actually... we keep canceling each other out. It's boring to go to the ground. Let's use the best striker. You can all use your hands. This is a revolutionary new idea. We can all use your hands.
And then it goes full circle again.
Exactly.
Boxing turns into grabbing, and people get frustrated, and they're like, fuck it, we're going to get rid of the rules.
So we're back to the circle. We're back to the circle. But I think that your efforts are the reason I like what you're doing, and the reason I like the conversation that you're always having with yourself, and your friends is that you're trying your hardest not to be a hypocrite or a liar.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do, because can I be honest with you? I, as a married man with 2 children, I try not to even think about it. I don't want to think about it too deeply.
Right.
I don't, because if I do, I'm going to panic. I'm going to fucking panic. And so I'm not kidding about that. So that's why I appreciate it, because you're not letting yourself off the hook.
No.
Most people have to let themselves off the hook. The harmony of their home, the tranquility of their spirit requires it, but it is a deal with the devil.
Yeah, it's like I think a lot of people have a belief that there must be some sacrifice, some penance that you have to pay in this life, almost like this life is hard, but heaven is great. You know, this kind of concept. And I just kind of categorically reject that premise. And I realize that life will always contain pain. You know, it's unavoidable. There'll be suffering that comes from that. But regardless, I don't think there has to be any foregone conclusion of a certain amount of shit that you have to put up with. Like, I think, so for me, my idea is just, all right, let's go for absolutely 100% the win. See if it's possible. Like, see if we can, like, I don't want to accept, because I've been in, you know, personally, if we're talking about monogamy, I've been in those relationships, and I've felt the sacrifice and the frustration. Yeah, there were some great times and things, but I was wondering, like, can I have that love without the sacrifice? And that's an exploration that I'm really keen on doing. And I think you can do that with everything. Can I have this without the pain? You know, let's see if it's possible. And in some cases it may be, in some cases it may not. Like, you can't do ayahuasca without the nausea, probably.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes certain things you have to do are going to be uncomfortable. You can't work on the ego without almost crumbling, you know, under the weight of not supporting it.
I think it's hard for people to have unabated. I think it's very difficult, certainly for me. Somebody said to me one time recently, said, a good mantra is, why not me? And I thought, ooh, that's interesting. And he said, why not me? Why can't I have something? You know, maybe I grew up all over the world and I saw a lot of poverty. And I was privileged just because I was a white American. And when you're 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and even younger, and you see children your age behind a glass window of your Buick or Cadillac, whatever the hell I was driving in the back seat of, and they're begging at your window. I remember in Africa, I saw these villagers come to the window in Kenya, and they were really hungry, these kids. And I remember in Yemen, and I remember in Pakistan, and I remember in India, although I was a little too young to remember India, but I remember Pakistan vividly. I remember seeing real poverty. I went to China when it was still communist. I think that for me, the guilt associated with being born on third base and just told to run home, and I think all of us have to, if you're a compassionate person and if you're an aware person, I think a lot of us have, and I'm sure you do, we have this notion that, boy, are we fucking lucky. I'm just lucky that I live under representative government.
Oh, yeah.
And that I have plenty to eat. And so it's hard sometimes to let yourself even have. Sometimes you want to suffer a little bit. And I think that's artificial too. I think you have to let go of that.
I think you have to completely let go. I think the better way to look at it is you have a different starting position. But you better run just as hard as every one of those people with a worse starting position, because you're in a position to create change that can affect a lot of those other people. That's a good point. That starting position is a blessing that you better take advantage of, motherfucker. Because if you don't, you know, then you're not doing your part to the world. You're not doing your part to the rest of humanity, because you have the opportunity to make a difference. So go out there and get it.
Right.
And you have to truly love people, you know, and have empathy for everybody in order to have that motivation, that proper motivation. Otherwise, it's all ego. There's really only two motivations: ego or empathy, as far as I can see it. You know, it's you're either serving yourself and trying to prop yourself up, or you're serving others, and that's always a much cleaner fuel source when you're trying to serve others.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, ego, because even legacy is ego. Yeah. Even legacy is the need to, I mean, even work and leaving a stamp is the need for immortality. I mean, if you think about it, I'm going to build this incredible building and I'm going to write this great story and all of that stuff. There is inspiration. I think there's also the idea of creating beauty for its own sake.
Sure.
See, that's what I'm the most interested in. That is, to me, as I get older, the idea of play for its own sake. So I want to continue to do what I would do regardless, for the sake of its own doing. Yeah. That's where stand-up comes in for me. That's when you're the most authentically yourself. I think that's the most real I am, when I'm on stage telling the truth. Yeah. People are laughing.
But even with stand-up, you can't do stand-up without the audience to receive.
Yeah.
It is a service of laughter to others.
Yeah.
And I think art, I guess there's some romantic idea of the art that you create for yourself, like your very own sand mandala that you create and observe it yourself once and destroy before anybody sees it.
I did comedy in my mirror. I was hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Like some part of it is this gift. It's this transmission to others that I think is.
But that is what I like about live performance, because my best performances, where I shocked myself or surprised myself, just went into the air. I made people laugh really hard. Maybe it was 300-400 people, and it just went away. And I could never replicate this because it's a song. It's a long song, and I hit every note.
Yeah.
Those moments are precious. Try recapturing that with a net. Good luck. You can't. Yeah. That's the other thing. It seems like that perfection is sort of this river. It's a verb. It's a verb. You have to be forgiving of yourself.
That's one of the key things, and I think I talked about that last time I was on the podcast with you guys. Is you gotta circumvent the self-judge. Like that self-judge that is always
huge, judging
you and saying that you're not worthy and creating these conditional love games. That is really what props the ego up. That's what causes you to get in these toxic relationships and suffer, is just that you don't have enough internal self-love to just be, as we said, be the force, be the wind that moves the tall grass.
What is your
enlightenment?
Give me your perfect day. When I know it varies, but a better way is what do you think you enjoy the most? I mean, give me the one action, activity, movement.
The crazy thing is that any action inherently is not necessarily consistently pleasurable or unpleasurable. It's my own internal state that goes into that action. Mm-hmm. Like some actions more reliably create positive internal states, like sex, for example. I generally am very present in that experience. Oh, yeah. So that's one of the enjoyable parts. It's not only the pleasure that's coming from the sex, but it's also the pleasure that's coming from my consciousness, which is no longer thinking about work and about Anand and about my fucking whatever.
You're kind of in flow, right?
You're in flow. It creates this flow state, and so other things that create that flow state. But anything, I can replicate that occasionally doing any activity at all. Doesn't matter if I'm just cruising around the office. Doesn't matter if I'm writing. That to me is the internal state is the most pleasurable day possible. Like no matter what I do that day, if I'm in that state and I can be that way, it's an amazing day. I mean, I'll occasionally, when I feel like that, I'll just almost want to cry at how much I love life. Just driving in the car, listening to music. Like it'll be so overwhelming. And then
that's like that moment in American Beauty where he's looking at that paper bag.
Yeah.
And apparently Alan Ball who wrote it, had that experience. He saw a paper bag and he goes, "There's so much beauty in the world. Sometimes I can't stand it."
Yeah. Yeah, I get that feeling, and that's the state that I'm chasing. That's where I'm just like fully present, and just life itself, reflecting, and that's I think the ideal for me. And so all of this work and maneuvering and reading and all of that is trying to more reliably get there, more frequently, and then ultimately, hopefully, be able to stick and stay there. Because I've seen an individual who's done it. When I got to spend time with Don Miguel Ruiz, he lives that way. Like it emanates off him. You can feel it. No matter what point in the day, whether he's giving a lecture, whether he's sipping wine at sunset. he's in that state, and man, life is fucking good in that state. Like,
Yeah. There's a great book by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
about flow state.
Yeah, he wrote a book called Beyond Boredom and Anxiety, and he compares the state that surgeons, painters, conductors, and rock climbers get into. It's a phenomenal book, and they get into this state of flow. He wrote it a long time ago, but they get into even the ritual. Even the ritual, like if you look at tennis players, the ritual between points, picking at their strings and twirling their racket and pulling on their clothes, it's a ritual that brings them back into flow and is part of flow. When a painter prepares his brushes, it gets into that state. That is a state of flow. You know, that's kind of probably what we stay alive for.
I 100% think so.
Yeah, sex, I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, sex, I'm usually like, yeah, you like that? You like that? You like what daddy does? Yeah. That's just me. I'm not as sexy as you are, Aubrey. Yeah, I know I'm old. My face is falling off my skull. Yeah, look at that vein in my forehead. Anyway, sorry. Sorry, guys. Deep conversation. I had to bring it there. To the level of a goat.
Yeah. How about you, man? Like anything in particular? Comedy, obviously.
Yeah, well, I like doing things there are two things. I like doing things I'm not good at. I love boxing, and I even like to spar because it terrifies me and I don't like getting hit. But I do it because...
One thing that Mihai talks about is stakes are high. You know,
Yes.
Stephen Kotler talks about it. Like when the stakes are high where people are watching or something. And also maybe also with sex. I mean, the stakes are high. You gotta...
Yeah.
You don't want to fucking be a bum.
Well, yes, my God. You're right about that. At 49, I have held on to my vanity. I fucking work out. I want to look good in my underwear.
Yeah.
It's true. I think, by the way, that's how you keep a relationship going. People who get lazy, you're not being respectful to your partner. I mean, you're fighting gravity. There's nothing wrong with that. But to me, I like working on a mindset. I like... So I love doing things that are difficult. I like to try to play the drums, or I love obsessing over my tennis stroke. I love boxing. So I like really stretching and using my body. I like being sore the next day. I like that idea and building a skill. But stand up also never gets easy because I'm always having to reinvent myself and always having to try to be
up in that.
Yeah, I mean, I just put my special out. I have to come up with a whole new bag of tricks. Which is great, but it can't just be funny. It's got to be honest to what I'm going through now. It's got to resonate with the zeitgeist and with myself. And by the way, be funny. And that challenge never goes away. So those are the things that are overwhelming. But
yeah, I think if I think about some of these activities, it used to be basketball was one of them. I was always a basketball player. Played very competitive ball in high school, and we would get 1,000, 2,000 people out to the games. We were a top 25 ranked national team one year.
Wow.
And so the stakes were really high. And that, the kind of emotions that brings. I mean, you got butterflies all day. Every single person in the school coming up to you, oh, good luck in the game tonight. I'll be there, blah, blah, blah. Every pretty girl you don't even know, know, like all of that. And then you perform in that situation. And then, after that's over, basketball's fun, and I enjoy it and I enjoy playing and I'm doing the movements. And then in college, I decided not to try out for the team and play college ball, but we had serious intra-fraternity ball where smaller microcosm, couple hundred people, our fraternity, the other fraternity, random girls, it would get heated, sometimes drunk people would fight, so at least there was something there.
Yeah.
And then so it just kind of kept that going alive. But now, like for me to play basketball, it's just kind of like an activity. Like it's not the same because I was used to those stakes so high. But I can.
Well, it's for me performing like you saw me with Joe, 3,500 people, and then performing for 35 people or 50 people in some like Black Box Theater in downtown LA. It's not that different for me. Yeah. I still get the same state. I still am responsible to a group of people, and I've still got to be funny. It really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe with the 3,500, I have to be a little bit more buttoned down with bringing the heat. And with 35, I can try something experimental, but I still have to make them laugh.
Well, I think there's a critical mass where it's like enough people to matter. Because actually the fraternity games kind of felt pretty similar. Even the 200 people felt similar to 2,000.
Yeah.
But there has to be a certain amount of stakes that matter. Whereas if it's a new activity, there's a certain kind of joy and intensity. Like I tried playing soccer, I'm terrible. Terrible at soccer. But I do something good in soccer. I run around like one of those fucking crazy. I'm ripping my shirt off. I'm doing the knee slide. It's like, it's incredible.
I know.
It's incredible because I suck.
Yeah.
You know, and whereas if in basketball, I'd have to fucking put up a triple-double. And I'd just be like, oh yeah, triple-double today.
Yeah.
You know, unless I had enough people out there who really cared. And then that would stretch my...
Any language that starts to become less of a mystery.
Yeah.
Boxing was such a mystery to me. And then I've been training and doing some sparring. And then a friend of mine who was a good football player, he came to do some boxing. And it was fascinating because I was like, oh boy, I would light you up. You're doing all the wrong things, but he's just new to the language.
Yeah.
But to compare to him, I looked amazing. He said,
Right.
dude, you can box. He said, no, I can't. I'm a little further down the road. So I'm doing things, you know, I've corrected a lot of my natural tendencies.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, listen, I wonder at times, so much of our natural state, you know, there are a lot of Christianity or most religions, I think, are really about tempering the natural state. A lot of them are sort of saying, I want total command of my beast, of the animal. And the spirit has to take over. And so it's a life of negation and a life of sort of an ascetic self-restraint, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand the fetish for that as well. It's a little bit like it's training. I mean, when you want to be a really good boxer or tennis player, your movements have to be honed to the nth degree.
That's like saying, I want to be a football player, but I'm not going to use my quads.
No, I don't think so.
I will not use my
No, I
legs.
think being effective in a language requires learning how to be free within very strong parameters.
Sure.
So that's what technique is. And I think people can get just as crazy about sort of abdicating any kind of pleasure, any carnal pleasure, eating bland food, never having sex. Now that to me, life is too fucking short.
Right.
But I can understand that those people look at that practice the same way you and I would look at getting good at jiu-jitsu or something.
Yeah, they're finding a resistance point and
Exactly.
defining themselves, sharpening their sword against that grindstone.
Yeah.
It's just choose a different grindstone. Like there's plenty.
Well-
I guess that to me, that's my perspective. Like we're here to taste as much as we can, but not be...
That's what Aristotle said.
Not be
He
as-
said that to Socrates, right? That was the argument. You know, Socrates said, you know, at the end you want, philosophers said, quiet contempt for this flesh prison that you live in and let go of the body completely. And Aristotle said, that's great until you've seen a woman give birth and she's screaming at the top of the lungs. We're physical beings.
Yeah.
We are of the earth and the sky. So taste your food. But it's,
Totally.
guess what? Ready? Moderation.
Yeah.
Moderation.
Yeah.
Learn how to temper. You may have passions on both ends, but the wise man knows how to, you've got your limitations, you learn how to deal with them, and moderation is sort of, you know, living in that middle.
Be at the helm of your starship.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that your demons aren't running you. The addict inside of us isn't the one driving the ship and making the decisions. You're the one driving the ship and making decisions. We all have demons. We all have these urges. We all have these appetites.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know what we also do? We also give, like what I've noticed is that a lot of us will allow ourselves one addiction.
Yeah.
You ever notice that? We're like, no, I don't drink, but I'm texting 7 girls all day. You know, you see that a lot with a lot of young dudes where you're like, oh boy. We all allow ourselves, you see it, and we're forgiving. No, I would never cheat on my wife, but I eat like a motherfucker and I have a giant belly and I'm a pre-diabetic.
Right.
Well, it's still part of the same issue of self-control. You're just letting yourself go in one particular area.
Yeah, and it's this kind of weird idea that there's only there's like a fixed amount of willpower, and if you put all of it towards like holding back on your monogamy, you're just going to be a fucking pig.
That's right.
And just eat everything you
That's
can.
right.
And there's something to be said for that. Like there's only so much energy we can put towards restraining our natural appetite. To me, I like to just make friends with my demons. I think one of my favorite shamans said the difference between a good demon and a bad demon is the good demons work for you. The bad demons work against you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it. All of these things are a part of us. We're the full spectrum. We're assholes. We're awesome. We're all of these things. It's just
I like that. I like the way you put that because that takes resistance out of it to an extent, kind of like they were talking, the new psychology around stress is that used to be, I'm really stressed, and they would say, well, you got to calm down, look at a fish tank and relax. And now they go, that's not the way to do it. You have this state, you're in this state, your throat's closing up and your temperature is rising, your cortisol levels, whatever. Well, you can try to fight that, but that seems to be a losing battle. What you could also do is say, ooh, this is my body getting ready for action. I'm going to embrace this feeling. Yeah. I'm going to make friends with this feeling. This is when I'm the most effective, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a cool way to look at not resisting, but actually flowing with it.
Yeah.
Letting it work for you.
I remember I was super nervous before a basketball game one year. My mom was a pro tennis player. And I was like, Mom, I'm just so fucking nervous. She's like, yeah, son, well, are you a cow or a racehorse? I was like, well, Ma, I guess I'm a racehorse. It's like, yeah, have you ever seen a racehorse before the starting gates? They're fucking stomping around, they're pissing, they're snorting. Like, they're getting ready to race. What do you expect? Like, you're about to race. You're not a cow. You're not going to just chew cud and just eat and fart and make methane,
Yeah. That's that's very good advice. Yeah. Look, some people like Tim Kennedy seem to be completely relaxed when they're about to fight, whereas Mr. Shaw was the opposite. Thank you.
Oh, shitballs. Come on in, gentlemen.
Thank you, Syl.
This is a nice, natural transition.
Yes.
Brian, it's been fucking great talking with you,
Aubrey,
brother.
You're a scholar, you're a gentleman, and I envy your arms and skin tone, not to mention your tattoos. Brendan Schaub, ladies and gentlemen. Brendan Schaub is
here. We're going to record another podcast with Brendan.
That's right.
Me and Brendan are going to
my protege, guys. And by the way, when you listen to Brendan, it's probably not going to be as deep. I've taught him pretty much everything. He's one of my best students.
Where are we at? Here?
You can sit down wherever. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please, everybody, listen to The Fighter and the Kid. I think it's the funniest podcast in the fucking world. You guys did an On It read the other day where you were preachers, and everybody in the office pretty much shit themselves. They listened to it. It was hilarious. You guys are fucking awesome. And definitely check out the live shows. Check out the stand-up. And buy
coming
some
to Texas
T-shirts. Yeah, well...
Yeah, when is this going to air?
This will air in like a week, so end of March.
We're in Texas, April 7th and 8th.
April 1, 2, 3, I'm at the San Jose Improv.
Hell yeah. Get on it. Much love, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace.
I'd like to acknowledge the company that is the expression of so many things I love, onnit.com, ONNIT.com, and also wearspace.com with 2 S's, putting out some really dope clothes and supporting my favorite charities. Lastly, please check out my blog, aubreymarcus.com, for the latest in all the ventures happening in my world. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell a friend, leave a review, and let's make this positivity contagious. Thanks for tuning in.